Alrighty, criminal defense attorney Regina Tabanakis is with us right now as we look at Jan De Silva's testimony here, and it is, I would think, something that is really going to be detrimental to the defense here. Thank you so much, Regina, for being with us. I want to listen to some more sound here, just to go back to what Jan De Silva says, what happened to the gun that he sold Hemy.
Basically, he told me that something bad happened with the gun. I thought like if it malfunctioned or something. He just told me he got rid of it. I asked him if he sold it or anything. He told me no. He just tossed it on the Lake Lanier, and that it was okay because he made sure that it was tossing somewhere where nobody can find it.
Okay, this is what is so striking to me, Regina. This is a guy who had a very high, powerful position at GE. He's obviously a smart man. He's obviously a man who is a critical thinker, who can oversee, I mean, he oversaw 5,000 people. Why would he be so incredibly irresponsible with his words? Why do people talk so much sometimes after committing a crime?
Several reasons. This is a very logical man that seems to, like you said, he has a power position. But when it comes to matters of love, even the most brilliant men can lose their minds. Mm-hmm. We've seen it throughout history that this occurs. He clearly had a huge fascination with Miss Snyderman. If it rose to the point that it made him insane, we're not sure yet. But what it did is it changed his entire life. He left his family. He left his kids. He moved out. You know, and there's also people like that become very confident because they are very smart. And so they become very confident that what they say, you know, no one's going to find out what he said to Jan De Silva, which is, again, a problem in the critical thinking, because that, if he was the way he was at GE, that kind of thinking would never go. It would never be okay. But now it comes to matters of the heart, and it's skewed. I mean, he's clearly not operating on all cylinders, not like he did before. But to what extent, we're not sure. But there's a confidence there that, you know, no one's going to talk to this guy.
And that's why people talk? That's why they freely...
A lot of times, they do. They're very confident. And obviously, he's a man who has achieved a thing, so he's got to be confident in his life. That confidence sometimes spills over into the wrong place. Where normally he should be careful, he's not. He's not.
And, I mean, talking about getting rid of the gun, he seems quite calculated in that. He knew what he was doing. How do you think the defense should cross this witness? What can they do in terms of damage control at this point?
It's important that they point out just what we were talking about, that this is a man who any other day is very controlled, who's behaved, who takes charge of situations. And now you have like almost the opposite. You have a guy running off at the mouth to Jan De Silva, a complete stranger. What does this guy have to do with anything? He sold him a gun. That's usually the end of the story. They're not friends, but yet you have him with this bizarre behavior, and now they're claiming insanity. Well, it is kind of insane to be calling up a complete stranger and telling him these details. So from that angle, it can spin in the defense's favor, because you have to have something wrong with you to be doing that. It's completely different from what you are on any other day.
Well, let's talk about, I want to play some sound where Jan De Silva talks about what he heard from Hemy Newman about a mistress.
He just told me, don't ever have a mistress. And then he then again told me, I just have, because of it, I have problem with my family. And he never again actually said anything about a mistress. He just told me that the family knew he had a gun, and there was like altercation, and that the gun was flashed or was seen by the members of the family, and they just all got scared, and he just basically needed to get rid of the gun as soon as possible.
So he told them, don't ever have a mistress. I mean, it sounds like he was kind of bitter, and I don't know if you noticed it, but when he mentioned that and then mentioned his family, we saw that shot of Hemy Newman kind of look down at the table. And don't you wonder what's going through his head at that point when he hears this testimony against him?
Oh, absolutely. The fact that he mentioned the mistress ties in the gun with Ms. Schneiderman. So clearly the gun was purchased, as the prosecution would say, to do something that involved his mistress, which is Ms. Schneiderman, as much as she'd like to deny it. You can't deny it. That ties in the shooting of her husband, because they need to get rid of the gun. Don't have a mistress. Did the mistress tempt him to do this? Was this Ms. Schneiderman's idea, which the defense is going to be capitalizing on? Did this woman put this idea in his head? Did she manipulate him through her love or through sex or through whatever way it was for him to be acting this way, for him to be doing these things which are not in accord with what he normally is like?
And let me ask you, Regina, how does the defense prove that? I mean, how do they prove that Andrea Schneiderman was so adroit that she drove this man to insanity?
It's difficult to prove it without having, you know, a picture of the two of them in the act. However, Ms. Schneiderman's behavior does not comport with a woman who was in love with her husband. Okay, you don't go on business trips once a month, adjoining rooms, and then things she said to her friend, very telling. One thing when she said to her, Miss Citron, she said they had an argument after coming back from one of these trips where she was with Hemy about who would take the kids to school. Very important when you notice where the crime happened, at the school. Was she planning this? Was she wanting to make sure that her husband was going to be the one taking them? Was she already having thoughts of this? It's a very critical little piece of information which ties her in. If I was a defense attorney, I'd say that ties her in directly. That's proof that she was thinking of that there's a scheme on her part. That's the only way you can really prove this, because there is no, you know, there's no pictures, there's nothing in the act between the two. But he clearly had a love infatuation with this woman that went beyond what was normal.
Well, and he went so far, and as we listen to this last piece of sound, to, according to Jan De Silva, asking De Silva to lie. Listen to this.
Yeah.
He asked you to say that you knew him from Georgia Tech.
Yes, sir.
Was that the truth?
No, sir.
How did you respond?
Basically, it was a awkward situation, and I wanted to get rid of everything that was going around me. So I basically told him, like, yes, I was going to lie for him. And he then tried to offer me money, which I refused.
This counters everything the defense is trying to prove, that if you're asking someone, you know, to lie for you, you know right from wrong. So how can insanity even play out here? What do you think the defense has to do to try to dilute or diffuse this?
I think that the defense needs to put forth the absolute ridiculousness of him confiding in Jan De Silva. That's really the only thing you can say.
So taking the credibility, trying to take the credibility away from the witness.
Correct. I mean, what else can you say? If he's asking somebody to lie, you don't ask people to lie unless you are aware that something bad has occurred, that someone's going to ask about this, and you don't want to be found out. That contradicts insanity completely.
Yeah, it could spell big trouble for this defense team. Okay.
But it is also kind of insane to call up a guy you've met once who sold you a gun and give him all this information. I mean, that's pretty bizarre.
Yeah.
It kind of goes into play with what they're saying, you know, and again, why would he have a reason to lie? They're going to have a hard time destroying his credibility because he has no motive.
Right.
Mr. De Silva doesn't know him. Right. He just met him, sold him a gun. I mean, he never thought he was going to have an ongoing relationship that led into a courtroom with this guy.
Exactly, exactly. Hey, Regina, thank you so much. Great points that you've made with us today. We're so glad.